Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So I want to talk about this group, Bob Vylan. This is a UK group from London. It's sort of like punk, hip-hop type of fusion. I listen to their music because of this, and it's dope. But if you don't know by now, there was a big music festival, Glastonbury, where Bob Vylan, this group, it's two guys, got in trouble because of what they said about the IDF. They led a chant saying "Death to the IDF" at this big music festival, and this whole story has taken on a life of its own. But when I originally heard about it, it was in reference to the group Kneecap, who also performed at the same music festival, but BBC decided that they were not going to live stream that performance because Kneecap has gotten in trouble in the past for things that they have said on stage in regards to Israel, essentially just calling for a free Palestine. And that is an Irish group, and Ireland, many people in Ireland have made very clear their support for Palestine because of the parallels between Palestine's opposition to Israel and Ireland's opposition to the British government. Not exactly the same situation, but definitely parallels in terms of the resistance taking place. And so when the news came out that the BBC was not going to live stream Kneecap's performance, that was a big deal. It was controversial, and I was seeing news stories about that. And then I saw the story that Bob Vylan made an even stronger anti-Israel statement during their set. So I originally heard about this as sort of like an upping of the ante, like because, you know, it's essentially a show of solidarity with Kneecap and with the Palestinian cause in general. Like if they're not going to be allowed to say their message, we're going to make damn sure that our message gets out. And in the background of their performance, they had the United Nations calls it a genocide. The BBC calls it a conflict, pretty starkly pointing out the divide between people who are honestly criticizing Israel's behavior versus people who want to make some kind of carve out for the behavior of Israel and its government. So essentially in Bob Vylan's set, which did get live streamed by BBC, they said death to the IDF. I think he said free Palestine or maybe from the river to the sea. But everybody's focusing on death to the IDF as the chant, and, broadly in the UK, this has been receiving condemnation, saying that this is appalling hate speech. Police investigations have been opened into both of these sets, so Kneecap set and Bob Vylan's set, as well as a couple other artists who shared a similar message. And so they're investigating this for criminal activity. And again, not in connection to anything that we haven't seen or heard. It's not like they're potentially being accused of some crime that they are committing at the same time they're making this speech. They're being investigated for, is it a crime to literally just say what they said on stage, death to the IDF? And so, personally, I'm not expecting those investigations to go anywhere. Not like I know anything about it. This is in Europe where they have harsher laws about that sort of thing in some cases. And we have hate speech laws in America as well. I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of free speech, but I'm also in favor of, general boundaries in society. And so I do think that you need to protect certain people from hate speech using the legal system. But at the same time, if you can't call out a military entity, who on the world stage has murdered more people in the last year than the IDF? Who has been more responsible for death in front of all of our eyes to see than the IDF? And really, you could say Israel itself. But if we're talking about military entities, to me, death to the IDF, that's a pretty calculated statement to make on that stage. Because some of these other slogans are vague in such a way that it does make it easier to make them out to mean something that they don't mean. And I suppose the premise that they're investigating this band over is like incitement to violence, although many people have used the term hate speech. I don't think you can make the case that it's hate speech at all. Perhaps you can make the case that it's incitement to violence because you are saying death to the IDF. But again, I mean, I don't think anybody represents death more in the public consciousness than the IDF. And if you're somebody who doesn't recognize that, then like just know that you are out of touch on that issue, because we're seeing data now that the Democratic Party has made major shifts on the issue of Israel and Gaza, and this is in America, but they're shifting heavily towards support for Palestine. What that means electorally, I don't know. Whether that means anything's going to change policy-wise, I don't know. But what it does mean is that showing the images of Palestine, what's going on there in Gaza, and continuing to talk about it, not stopping the conversation, not stopping the righteous indignation, despite how demoralizing this entire disaster has been. It has worked to shift public opinion, and it has come to manifest itself more in people's minds, in the minds of the broader public. So the more that starts to happen, the more the sort of powers that be and the large media conglomerates, etc., are going to try to clamp down on messages that they don't support or understand, because they're not really understanding that the momentum is shifting against these entities like the IDF or even Israel itself. And that's nobody's fault but their own. And I'm going to shed a tear for the IDF. They've done nothing but kill for the last year and a half. Like nothing but kill. October 7th happened. That was horrific. And ever since then, it's just been nothing but wholesale slaughter of Palestinians and Gazans. And so I have no sympathy at all for anybody taking part in that, regardless of what their patriotic or nationalistic motivations might be, or pious motivations might be. So honestly, I think death to the IDF is a completely fair and righteous chant to chant. Doesn't mean they're not going to do everything that they can to punish these groups for it. I don't think it'll go anywhere, because again, I think the court of public opinion is largely against them on this, and this is a Streisand effect where both Kneecap and this group Bob Vylan are way more widely known because of this. And by the way, they're like 10,000 times more badass than most artists in the US, because you don't see US artists going out on a limb like this. And this is what happens. What's happening to Bob Vylan right now, they're losing a lot of opportunities, they're losing deals, people are dropping them, they lost their visas so they can't come tour in the US. And that is what happens when you really go out there and say something that they don't want you to say. And by they, I just mean people with a lot of money. I'm not pointing to any group, because I don't think it's about that. I don't think this is about Jewish people. I think it's more so about Zionists. But even that, I think in a lot of cases, these people that own and operate these different media conglomerates in the music industry or the news industry, I think they're just afraid, and they're afraid. And there's a ton of power that has been compiled for the cause of Israel through AIPAC and whatever organizations work to the same end in the UK and in Europe. And it's become a very powerful political force. And so I think for the most part, the same fear that motivates people not to speak up on a more granular level also represents the fear response that we see from the broader media apparatus. And yes, that's because Zionists and Zionism have a lot of influence across the world. But I think it's also it's a very established norm and status quo that is now being challenged in a way that it never had before. And it's possible that the only reason is because now we're seeing so many images of what the disparity between Israel and Gaza and the violence there actually looks like. Whereas in the past, the perception of the situation was a lot more controlled via headlines and sort of selective coverage. So we're in a new era now, and groups like this, while clearly on the right side of history, they're going to try to make an example of them. And I do think what this brings to mind for me is that it feels like the righteous indignation does work, because as demoralizing as not just everything that's happened with Gaza has been, but just the state of everything, right? It's like there's been so much pushback to fighting for the most basic rights of human beings. And it seems like those engaging in that pushback are the ones that are winning politically. And so they control the situation right now. And so a lot of horrible shit is happening at once. But I'm also noticing that righteous indignation is still working the way that it always has. And it's appalling that as many people have had to die in Gaza before the momentum could start to shift in the right direction. And there's been small ripples of this momentum shifting over the course of this last year and a half. And so I don't know how long this takes or what the end game or outcome of all of this destruction is. But I do know that continuing to be a moral center still seems to be working, whether it's these guys on stage or people standing up for their communities against ICE and showing up in the streets. Whether the powerful people of the world want it to or not, that is still what controls the conversation, at least a large part of it. And when people talk about wokeness and this idea that like wokeness is being pushed back upon, and now we're in the non-woke era, and sort of boiling down so many forms of societal progress, whether it's language, progress in the way we talk to each other, progress in the way that society operates, putting that all under the umbrella of woke and pushing it to the side. What that really is, and the reason that there's so much disagreement about what that term means and why it's such a wedge, a successful wedge. The word woke has turned out to be a successful wedge. And that's because what the right is referring to is the righteous indignance of people on the left that has existed for a long time. And it's not just on the left. Again, these are human rights issues. And so that has largely manifested on the left. But as I've pointed out, it kind of manifests as its own. And then the political entities that want to attach themselves to that cause will do it. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to people realizing that in some way they need to stand up for themselves. But there is reality to the fact that righteous indignance was somewhat institutionalized at a certain point, and even potentially became a weapon of certain institutions. I'm not really that convinced that was ever a government thing, that the government was enforcing wokeness on people. You know, like nobody ever was gone after for conservative beliefs in the way that the government is going after people for being anti-Zionist now. Never, it never happened. However, you know, when it came to like corporations and that sort of thing, they aligned themselves with that righteous indignation, and it became kind of a hodgepodge of many different causes that were all fueled by the same desire for a diverse form of social progress. And then the institutional nature of that movement, you could call it, if it is one movement, which it's not, but let's pretend it is for a second. The institutional element of that was chipped away at by the right and by essentially the corporate assessment that the tides were turning, more people were against the quote unquote wokeness, and so that motivated them to change their approach marketing wise. And so still the righteous indignation that fuels those movements is there, but it seems that the kind of mask has been ripped off of our society, and that can make it easy to look at it as though we haven't made any progress at all. But if you look at the areas where fascism in its various forms are not able to intrude on our lives and our safety and our health in the ways that it wants to, are the cases where that righteous indignation has held up. So, I don't know. I'm talking in very vague terms right now. But when I see the momentum genuinely shifting in terms of Palestine and Gaza, at least in terms of what the electorate of the Democrats seems to want, to me that says that despite all of the reactionary propaganda, the simple human crying out for help and for empathy and for justice is prevailing, as it seems to have throughout various watershed moments in history. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Respect to Bob Vylan. Check out their music. It's really fire. I like it a lot. And good luck to them. I think they're going to be fine in terms of the investigation, but I think they also lost a lot of opportunity because of this. And that's exactly why they're fucking dope. And that's why they're still going to be around in the future, because they stand up for something. And so the people are going to support them. So salute to them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm posting different kinds of stuff there, like podcasts that don't make it to the main channel, book reviews, movie reviews. I'm reading Catcher in the Rye right now. I'm probably going to review that on there. Also posting music early. I've got a couple EPs out that were available first for members only. Right now, there's a couple tracks on there. There's a freestyle by me and my buddies Wrecked and Psych. So if you want access to all that, different podcasts and other stuff, become a member. And if there's other kinds of content that you'd like to see for members only stuff, then let me know and we'll work some things out.